item on our agenda is the minutes from the last meeting. Was there any changes or corrections or omissions that anyone caught in it?
Yeah, actually, this is page 2 under the discussion of possible action on the park capital improvement plan. The sentence regarding the, what did we call it? Dedicated funding is awkward. It says, Mike stated currently the divider is north of Interstate 94 and south of Interstate 94 for the fees that have been collected. But actually, it's only that there are only fees available for something south of 94. Isn't that correct?
So
there's no.
Correct. So the dedication fund north of Interstate 94, all of that money has been put towards the new pavilion that is being built in Grandview Park right now. So, you know, in actuality, it's zeroed out. So there are no funds available. However, there's still the two separate dedication funds, Trust Fund A and Trust Fund B, depending upon the location.
Well, it sounds awkward to me, so maybe it just needs to say the funds for north of 94 have been used, so there only exist funds for south. Something to that effect. It's just odd.
Yep, we can make those changes.
Any other changes or corrections? If not, the chair will call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. In the packet was everything on the new boat launch. The committee that's been working with Mike and with the mayor on the planning has met several times with the engineering firm, and here is, if you will, their best efforts to date. They've really gone around and around on different options and solutions, and this appears to be the strongest. Mike, you want to take over?
Yeah, so as Pat stated, you know, from our previous discussion way back in February with both, they came back with 3 different designs, one of them being a 80 stall design, one of them around a 60 stall design, and the other one looking at Paul's request of a boat launch to the south side of Buckeye Garage. And we brought it forward to the Lakefront Review Committee just to kind of get their initial thoughts before we brought it to Park Board. And right away, the 80 stall, you know, design option just wasn't feasible from a land use standpoint. We know that there's already been discussions from the public about concerns about expanding the current parking lot as is, and the 80 stall option would have went basically to the northern edge of the volleyball courts, which would mean those would have to be removed. And then there's a couple huge cottonwood trees in that area of the park that would have to be taken down because of it. And you know, the general consensus was there probably wouldn't be a lot of support, and in fact probably a lot of opposition to that option. So it was kind of, you know, tossed out right at the get-go because it wasn't feasible, right? You know, we all kind of wanted to double the parking lot, but it just wasn't going to happen. So then it really boiled down to, you know, existing parking, you know, keeping it the same, expanding it to around a 60 stall, and then looking at that south side. Now, the south side, Paul, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, and the rest of the board had a chance to look at it. There are some obstacles down there as far as some of the grade, having to move the playground, again, taking down mature trees. So, you know, I put it in the packet just so you could kind of see, but FOTH isn't recommending that option. They're recommending, you know, the 54 stall option that we kind of came a conclusion to. It was just kind of a, you know, it met all the needs that we're looking for. I would say it has the boat washing stations, the traffic flow. That was kind of one of the things when they made the initial proposals. They had a couple different 60 stall options, and the traffic flows weren't the greatest. So I kind of basically, they had a call with me. I said, you know, as a boater myself, these are the problems that I see using that launch. So they kind of went back, made a couple changes, and came back with this with this design that you see in your park board packet. Now the design that you see, the main entrance is still the same off of Buckeye Street in front of the old Buckeye Garage. And then basically the parking is split up into kind of a north and south parking lot. And the main exit would be kind of in the middle of the lot out on the First Street. So I'm here to answer any questions, any discussions that you may have, any questions that you may have. Mike Johnson is here as well. He was a part of that meeting with Foth here about a month ago, so he's here too. So I'll open it up to the rest of the board.
If I could just add one thing, the committee was really conscious of how to handle the traffic at the launch during the busiest or peak hours. Those being usually in the evenings, and those being when inclement weather has started to come up and people are trying to get off the river and into shore. And the layout that they came up with really does a good job of being able to move people through and not trap people in boxed in corners or dead end spaces waiting for traffic to move. That's all I have.
Yeah, I like the design a lot, Mike, and thanks for looking at that option south of Buckeye. I just wanted to kind of see that to see if it works, and it doesn't seem real feasible, so I totally get that. My question on the design here is, I did not see where the boat wash stations are. Can you guys explain, or you or Mike explain where those guys are?
Yeah, so I can explain that. So as you dock your boat, the ramps that are currently there, if you pull your boat straight out, there's some triangle islands. The boat wash station would be located on those triangle islands. So it'd be on the north side and the south side as people are exiting out. So you pull your boat out, you basically pull over to the side, tie your boat down, wash it down, and then you would exit out on the First Street.
Got it. I missed it because it said tie down, so I was looking for the boat wash. Sounds good.
Yep.
And I also appreciate not taking too much of that green space right up to the volleyball pit. I think that was wise of that group to kind of hone it down. So, I mean,
and it backed down from it backed off that big giant cottonwood tree to remain as far from that as they could without doing any damage to its root structure.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. So,
yeah. And then the other thing that,
go ahead.
I was gonna say just one more thing on the design. We tried to incorporate the trails, any trees that would have to be not taken up. We would move any of the trees, the younger stock that's in that kind of that area of the park. We could plant it back in some of these islands along the river, so on and so forth. So the trees that would be impacted by this expansion would be relocated and still used. So go ahead, Karen.
I like the plan too. I just not really knowing what the existing one is. How much bigger is this?
So we currently have 40 stalls.
Okay.
And this one would bump up to 54.
The other big thing, though, along with that, is the fact that the elevation is changing in the parking lot now and with the boat launch, so that during high water we're not closed, so that people can still launch, and we have a usable boat launch through a greater portion of the year.
So Karen, if I may, this is Mike Johnson. It would be open until 683 is when we go to No Wake currently. So we want to be open up until that point where it would go to No Wake. So this would go to what, 683.4, Mike?
Yeah. Yep. Because right now we have to shut down the launch at about 681.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I would move to approve the design as presented here.
Second.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. I think it's really going to make a nice change to down there.
Yep.
So now just before we go on to the next agenda item, Pat, so the next step in the process, this would go to council for Monday. If approved there, then FOLT would look to work on kind of final designs and start applying for the grants that would help fund this project. And we would look to, hopefully, if everything goes well, and the grants are still available, it all depends on funding for upcoming years. Everything's kind of weird with the budgets, but we look to maybe start constructing this in 2021. That's our goal anyways. So that.
Okay.
Quick question on that, Mike, is 2021, is that when they're redoing 35?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So we might have that construction and then this area. It's gonna be a tough corner down there.
Yeah.
They say they can coordinate it. We'll see. Next item coming up on our agenda, it was also included in the packet, is the oh gosh, my brain just froze up on me.
Memorial policy.
Memorial policy.
I could not conjure that, and I wanted to say gravestones, and it certainly wasn't that. You know,
No.
Geezer hood snapped right there. The syntax was gone. But anyhow, memorials going into our parks, and we've had some very good discussions about it in the past. Mike, you want to take over with what you've provided so far?
Yeah. So, this is the memorial policy that's in your packet are changes that Paul had made and then reviewed by Catherine McKittrick, the city attorney. I have not been able to go out and physically identify locations and put them on a map yet, which we've talked about including in the memorial policy moving forward, is having kind of designed set areas for each type of memorial that we would like to see in our parks, whether it's a tree, a bench, a picnic table, so on and so forth. And then I was also supposed to identify those amenities that we would like to see as part of the memorial policy. So I haven't had a chance to do that. However, discussions I've had with park board members following our last meeting, a couple of things that have come up were, with everything that's going on in our country today, should we include some type of language in there if there's a group of individuals that would like to request the removal of a memorial, if there should be a policy or something in the policy about that. And then also at the last park board meeting, we discussed this whole idea of reviewing the memorials after a 10-year period. Do we contact the people that put in the memorial originally and have them repay for another 10 years? After 10 years, do we take them down? I guess looking for direction from the board on your thoughts about that as well.
Well, should we take them one by one, starting at let's go from the top, but more importantly, this will then go as a recommendation to the city council for adoption. Do you want to have a motion come out of us tonight, or do you want to just have further discussion tonight?
To be honest, I'd just rather have further discussion at this point and then give me an opportunity to bring back the full package with maps. I'm gonna talk to our GIS technician, Nick O'Brien. He'll be able to put together some maps of the parks and various locations, so on and so forth. So I'd like to kind of package it all together and bring it to council. So I would probably look for final approval at next month's meeting and then bring it to council sometime in September. That's the way I envision it happening or rolling it out right now.
I think doesn't it go to planning commission next month? Is that?
Yeah, you're right,
Yeah.
Paul. Good
Okay.
catch.
So my thoughts are, I think that's a good idea to put in some kind of a provision if something needed to be recalled. I saw that the language said 1,000 signatures.
Yeah, I just grabbed it out of the air.
I know it seemed like a really high threshold to me for a town this size, but I was thinking if it was a really hot issue, like some of what we've seen this summer, right? You could probably get 1,000 signatures pretty quickly. But I don't know if we want to say 500 or something, or just it's a significant number, because it sounds like the council would, the common council would make that decision or something, but you would petition toward that. So I didn't know, the 1,000 just struck me as a little high, but I'm open to
Yeah,
other ideas people have too.
nothing is set in stone on that number. Like I said, like you said, Paul, I just kind of picked a number out of thin air, like, roughly 10%. And that's what I went with just to start
Yeah.
discussions.
Well,
I
guess
didn't. Go
ahead.
ahead, please.
Okay, I would be fine with reducing that even to 500. I don't think I'd want to go lower than that. I'd like to see a fairly significant number.
Mhm.
I agree with you on that. I think it should be to have something taken out. That's a pretty
Yes.
drastic step.
Mhm.
Yes.
And then on the 10-year timetable, this problem, well, not the problem, but some of the hurdles that I see with contacting the family of a person that has put in a memorial is having the current contact information, right? So that's troublesome sometimes. And then if there's some family dynamics and if I get a hold of one person, they say take it out, and then the brother, the sister, or the wife or somebody says I didn't authorize that. I just don't want to get into that type of situation. So those are a couple of things that I consider when I'm thinking about it. But
Plus keeping track of them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I kind of like that language in there, Mike, about the memorials will be reevaluated by the city of Hudson after 10 years and will determine their enduring commemorative value. But I don't know, by the city of Hudson, are we talking about, would that be the staff? Would that be like your position? Would that be the park board? I wasn't sure who are we referring to when you say city of Hudson in that line?
I think we'd want to identify that. I don't think it would be the council's position to look at memorials after 10 years. If we're talking about benches and stuff,
Right.
Is that really their place?
Yeah.
I think it should come back to the park board.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
We wouldn't
Maybe
And then
do
the park
this-
board, would make a recommendation to council.
we wouldn't do this on everything. It would just be if there's a reason to do it, right? It wouldn't be automatically
Correct.
as we review it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if somebody had a bench, I'm thinking that's in good shape and it's been there 15 years or 20 years, like why deal with it, right? That's what you're thinking.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if there's something we needed to deal with, yeah, but I maybe just change that to the park board, Mike, for that line.
Okay.
So we know who's kind of working with that.
Okay.
And maybe even as years go on and there's more benches and more trees and water fountain, whatever we're going to do here, maybe it's a yearly review of our current inventory. Again, not physically going and checking each bench or whatever, but that way it's sort of, hey, this year we've got a couple benches that are questionable. So it's not an ongoing thing because we're going to get these requests throughout the year, some in January, some in July, whatever. I don't think it could be a weekly task. I think if we maybe do a yearly review of our current inventory and what the date is, and that might make it a little more easier to manage as inventory as opposed to all the sites.
That and what do you do if Uncle Ernie's picnic table got hit by a tree limb and smashed? Do we replace it?
There is a provision here that says it's expected a memorial will be in place for a period of at least 10 years. However, city reserves the rights to remove based upon, a site redevelopment, vandalism.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't catch that.
That's
but
fine.
I've been reading it on a phone.
Yep. Nope.
Any other issues that anyone caught that stuck with them?
If we could go back to, I guess it's 3.7, the removal of a memorial.
Yeah.
The second sentence there, council will review the memorial and its historical significance, you know what I'm saying, prior to any approval. The word
You
approval,
got that from me.
I wonder if it would be, I want to make sure that just if we do 500 signatures, it's not, yeah, we got it, now they're going to take it down. I know we're saying that the council will review
500 signatures would trigger the review.
Okay. So the word approval there means the approval of a possible removal.
You got somebody here.
Yes.
Is that kind of what that's saying?
Yeah, I could see how that be
Or
implied.
say any change to the memorial in question or something like that?
We could just take out the, council review of the memorial and the historical significance when 500 signatures are obtained, and leave it at that.
Yep. Yeah,
And
that's
just
good.
take out, okay, we'll just
That
cut
sounds
that
good.
whole. Yeah, because it, like you said, it does kind of imply that if you get 500 signatures, it's coming down guaranteed, which it's not. It's just,
Right. We want
Yep.
to keep that. Yeah. Yep. That'd be
Yep.
good. Thanks, Mike.
yep. Okay.
And I guess the one thing I want to stress too, Mike, and you already probably know this is, and there's no rush on this, so I don't feel like you need to feel pressured to have this big list completed right away, but we hold a lot of the kind of the cards here, the power here in terms of whatever list you come up with. In other words, like 85% of these memorials might be trees, which would make them really easy to deal with as opposed to some of the other things. So I'm just saying, however you decide to lay it out, it really gives us the flexibility to figure out what do we need, and people are basically volunteering to pay for it. So that's why I see the win-win in it. So, but I think how the park department in a sense approaches that is going to determine a lot of these kinds of questions. So
I think you're right, Paul.
Okay. Yeah, I agree, Paul. I don't think there is really a rush to get. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'd rather take our time and get it right. It's coming to the end of the fall anyways. We're not going to be throwing in memorial benches. By the time they get here, it's going to be winter. So I mean, we do have some time here. So let's take our time and do a thorough job and get it right. So when we do present it to council, it's there's not a lot of discussion that goes through.
And then my other question, Mike, what if it goes to planning and they don't like it?
That is a great question. I think Mike Johnson left. So
I guess one thing I would do is I really feel strongly about this policy. So if I'm willing to say if planning doesn't go for it, I would put it on the Common Council's agenda at a future date down the road. I mean, I'm not hoping for that. I'm hoping that planning can work with it.
yeah.
But I just don't want it to die of planning, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm not expecting that.
I don't think it will.
But I'm a little bit, I don't know. You just never know. So
Yeah. Okay.
Anything further to that, Mike? If not, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda was our capital budgets.
All right. So at our last meeting, we kind of had some preliminary discussions on the capital improvement plan for the next 10 years, starting in 2021, running through 2030 as part of the outdoor rec plan that's expires at the end of this year, and then I'm going to be updating. And the purpose of the CIP is to include this as an appendix in the outdoor rec plan, so that gives myself, the park board, the Common Council, and the city administrator a roadmap of what the park board is looking to accomplish and put in our parks for amenities, any maintenance items, so on and so forth. We had come up with a big list, and we were talking about it last meeting. It's like, Mike, why don't you just kind of more of the maintenance, what's needed. Why don't you put something down on paper, give it a stab at it, and then we can have some discussions on that. So I put together a CIP and tried to keep around 300, 250 for the most part every year, being a more realistic number for bonding purposes. The one thing that I did want to mention that wasn't included and that is in the packet is all of you should have received a letter from the Hudson Pickleball Association.
Yes.
They had written the park board a letter requesting that they be included in the CIP based upon our conversations in 2021, and then based upon our conversations at the last meeting, the board was really hesitant about going at any big ticket items because of the upcoming unknowns with the budget and the CIP, and they, you kind of rather pick off a couple of small ones and get those accomplished and get those through, and then try to go after anything big. So that
And the
was
city manager was not in favor of it either.
Mhm. So that has been omitted. I know that there are some Hudson Pickleball Association members on the call tonight, and if Diane or any representatives want to chime in at this time, feel free to do so. But other than that, I think what I'm looking for is just some general discussion, and like I said, nothing is set in stone here. These dollar amounts or amenities that were left off can be put in. We can take $700,000 of items to city council in a given year. The realistic probability of them passing $700,000 worth of improvements are probably slim to none. But like I said, it's nothing set in stone. So this is your roadmap.
Yeah, thanks for doing that, Mike. I walked through this, and I think you did a good job. I think, some of the things we talked about last time was, again, with our world changing, that trails and maintenance of outdoor things are probably going to be pretty key. People are using our parks, but like I said, I think you did a good job kind of with what numbers you used, and split them up well.
I have just two questions. The Orange Street parking lot, that really wasn't in the original, I didn't see it in the original stuff that we saw. Is that critical? Do we have to do that next year?
So the Orange Street parking lot, we could certainly, that's under Lakefront Park, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that number can be taken out. We might be able to do that in-house. At the end of Orange Street, there's like a little crushed rock parking lot on the south side of the road there, about five stalls.
We
Basically,
traded
all that
for those parking spaces when we straightened out the trail and worked everything out with Andy Crone on his building there.
Mhm.
And the intent was to make and keep that as a convenient place for paddle boarders and kayakers and the like to be able to come into the park and launch there.
Yeah, it's not just the asphalt. There is some stormwater remediation that needs to happen at the end of Orange Street. A lot of rainwater comes down, and you'll see on both the north and south side of Orange, it does kind of run off and wash out the crushed rock that's there. So that improvement to the parking lot would also include kind of that stormwater improvement, so that it doesn't continue to wash out onto the trail and then down the kayak paddleboard launch.
Am I thinking of the right spot? That's where the booster, or near where the booster barn was, and now
No.
would be
It's just up, just north of the old Norlake Warehouse building.
Okay,
so south of what I'm thinking. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little hidden parking lot. Like I said, right now it's crushed rock, and it's right along the trail, right at the end of Orange Street on the west side of Orange. Like I said, about 4 or 5 cars total are able to park there. And the intent would be to, like I said, improve that area, make a nice paddleboard, canoe, kayak launch, and then have, parking only for those users of that area.
Yep.
And I believe that was identified in the Lakefront Vision Study. Pat, correct me if I'm wrong. But
Yes, it was.
Yep.
Then my other question, and not for this year, but is there a way we could break down the pickleball court project and put it into future years, maybe even 2 or 3 future years, so at least there's some progress on it over time?
I had that same thought, Karen, so I think that's worth talking about.
I mean,
Michael, what are your thoughts?
I mean, this is, like I'll say, this isn't my, CIP. This is the park boards. And if there's enough support to include some monies in for pickleball, then, I mean, I'm not going to say no. I mean, do I think pickleball would be a great addition to our parks? Yes. Do I think it'd be used? Yes. Do I think it would be an attraction to our city? Yes. So, I mean, it's different than what we've done in the past with associations. Typically, associations have kind of raised their own money, but I mean, there's nothing saying that we can't designate some monies. Now, of course, myself or park board don't have the ultimate say on what gets bonded. That's city council. But I mean, if that's what the board would like to do, I'm not here to say no.
Historically, every organization in the community has funded their own organizations, soccer, hockey, boosters. The Pickleball Association, we're giving them the land as the city's contribution as a place to have it, without them having to go out and raise the funds to buy property. It's at a time when everything is going to be as tight as it's looking. I don't know that we can go to the city and ask for funds, at least from what I'm hearing on the city's staff side.
Yeah, next year is going to be a big question mark with funding. I know we started working on our operating budgets, and we're being told to reduce our budgets or keep it at zero. I mean, no increases across the board. So with the increase in personnel costs, with health insurance, we're having to reduce our operating expenses. So it's going to be a challenging year. Obviously, with the CIP is a little different because it's bonded money, but I know that city administrator and the council are going to want to. We got a lot of big projects coming up next year with Highway 35 reconstruct. That's 1.8 million. So there's a lot of big ticket items for next year. But like you said, Karen, if it's not next year, maybe the following year. That's open for.
Plus, they're looking to what we have to do for Carmichael.
And maybe it is. Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, are they when they first came to present to us, they didn't ask us for money, right? Because I think Paul Anderson was going to be making a he was going to put some money up when they thought it was going to be at Anderson Park. Is that correct? So are they looking to make up for that amount because we weren't able to do it at Anderson Park? Or were they always looking for money? I didn't think when they first presented they were looking for money from us.
They've always been looking for money.
Okay.
For the city to do it.
Deanne, can you answer that?
Yes, I can. When we were set to go to Anderson Park, we were going to pay for the whole thing. And that was in conjunction with Paul Anderson. When that was taken off the table because of the neighbors, we had to go to Plan B, which was Grandview. Grandview is twice the cost of the Anderson Park courts. The other thing I guess I would like to say, I mean, we think we can, with Paul's help, because he's still willing to put some money forward, even if it isn't at Anderson Park. We think we can raise $75,000 to $80,000. The other thing I guess I would like the park board to think about, 35% of your population are 50 plus years old. I'd like to have you ask yourselves, what have you done recreational for those 55 plus people in your city?
Paul, what were your initial thoughts on after reading the letter from the park board? Or from the pickleball, I'm sorry.
I've always been actually open to a partnership. I like Karen's idea, though. I think, I think if it was spread out over a period of, 2 or 3 years, I think that would make sense. I mean, my thing is, I have sympathy for the pickleball folks because they've been working on just getting a space for over 2 years. And now we have the space and the funding is holding them back. I also think ultimately the city owns these facilities. So I think it's a lot to put on a private group to say, you're going to raise all the money and then the city's going to own this. So I know that's been the precedent, what Pat was talking about, but I'm not necessarily thinking that's a great precedent. I would rather see us work in partnership with some of these groups to do what we can. But we have to kind of, I think, talk about the bigger picture here with some of the funding stuff to figure out what we could do for the Pickleball Association. But I would be open to a partnership. I do think funds are going to be difficult. Can I ask a couple other unrelated questions, or do you want to keep talking about this part, Mike or Pat?
It's up to you guys. It truly is. I think it's something if we want to start looking at again, Mike, we can sit down with the mayor and city manager, Mike Johnson, and see what the likelihood of being able to get something into the 2022.
Mhm.
I don't see it happening for next year. With what I'm hearing and everything that's coming at the city with parking and with Carmichael, there's not going to be a lot of wiggle room in bonding. Just what we're looking at as a city staring us in the face.
Deanne, got a question for you. Would the Pickleball Association look at constructing 4 courts next summer and then 4 courts the following summer? Or what do you envision there? Are you trying to do everything at one time?
No, we do understand. I mean, we're living it. We're living the pandemic with everybody else. So we understand that. I believe, I can't speak for the board. I would have to take it back to them. But I do believe that we would make that a consideration for sure, Michael.
Well, then we should look at that and see how that can happen. And
Well,
start it with 4 and build from there.
I'd like to suggest we put it wouldn't be next summer, maybe it's a whole year before we start, if they're willing to go that route. And maybe we look at a different financial configuration. If they're willing to raise more money, then the city portion would be less. So
Let's revisit it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Karen. I would be open to looking at that.
I guess what I'd like to say is none of us are getting any younger. Those that play
Oh, why?
pickleball are, yeah, as you know, seniors, most of them. I would love to have you, if we can come up with a good portion of the money, consider it for next year with us maybe paying for more of it, and then the following year, the city taking it on. The rest.
Let's take a look at what that would be and what that would look like in dollar wise. And then we can talk to the city staff and get their input on it.
That would sound great.
Mike, is that doable?
Mm-hmm. So that means we have to get I know Pickleball has had some preliminary conversations with Zappa Brothers just to get some rough costs, but we're gonna have to try and nail down a pretty decent estimate. I can talk to the city engineer and see if he can help us out with that. Just so we have the thing is I suppose we have a little bit of time, not a lot. This CIP is going to be coming to council along with operating budgets here in the next couple of months. So I know Aaron, the city administrator, really wants to have something hammered down here within the next month to bring to council for discussion.
Well, then we should have Aaron in our discussions.
Okay.
I mean, we really should, because he's going to tell us whether something's within the concept of reality or not.
Okay.
I have a couple broader questions. Maybe Mike, you can help me with. So the 2021, if I'm reading this right, is 1.637 million. And
Yeah.
the 2022 is 1.312. And then after that, we get back into the number that we were talking about originally.
Yeah.
So my guess is when I looked it over, it's not a guess, but it's basically the boat launch, right? I mean, next year, we're really talking about the boat launch project.
Yeah, the
There are a
boat
couple
launch.
repurposing things, but that's kind of what we're talking about.
Yep. So the boat launch for next year, and that would be paid for hopefully by grants, larger portion, and then any matching funds would come out of the TID, downtown TID, and the same thing would go for 2022. Yep, for the boardwalk.
And then my question is the boardwalk, really. I'll just be honest, because we're not even looking at, we don't have the design before us. That's a $1 million project, and that's a lot of money. My thought was last meeting when we talked is to really look at smaller projects. Because of COVID, we're not going to have these big budgets. So I think smaller projects lined up makes more sense. The boardwalk, I guess my question for that is, we've been talking about a transient dock, and I would like to see the transient dock, but not necessarily a boardwalk for $1 million. Because if we don't do the boardwalk and we do the transient dock, I'm not sure what that price is. I don't know how I haven't seen any numbers on that. But if we just did the transient dock, my idea is then in 2022, you free up all this money to do, whether that's pickleball, or I'd love to see the dog park get plumbing, get water out there, like we had Ben Wasserman and his wife out the other day talking about us. I'd love to see the wedding gazebo at Prospect Park. That's $10,000. There's really a lot of small items that we could pull off in 2022 if we just said no to the boardwalk and said, let's talk about the transient dock, because the dock is, I think, the key, because the dock brings people in for business and whatnot.
So I'll break down what boardwalk actually means. It should be labeled transient dock. So the boardwalk is basically a trail on the water, which expands from roughly the volleyball courts up to the Walnut Street Bridge. And it would be a 12-foot wide boardwalk with 2 or 3 fishing piers jutting out from it. And then the remaining areas would be used for transient docking for boats to come off the river and tie up to the dock and go downtown and grab lunch or dinner, so on and so forth. So it would be a dual purpose structure. That structure would also be paid for out of grant money and TID money, so it wouldn't be bonded for. So for 2022, right now we have basically, if you take out that $1 million, the only thing that's being bonded for in 2022 is for a splash pad in White Camp Park. So we can either remove that and put in the smaller items or reduce the money for the splash pad. But the $1 million really doesn't affect the bonding because it's alternative funding.
So that's not coming from the same pot we're talking about here.
No, it's
Okay.
a different pot. But from a grant perspective, I need to have it included in the CIP. So when I apply for the grants, that it shows to the DNR that this has been thought about, this is in the CIP, so on and so forth. So that's why it's in there.
Thanks for clarifying that. That's a huge, thank you.
Yep.
And on the note of the splash pad, Mike, has there been any further conversations with the hospital foundation regarding their wanting to participate in doing that?
Yeah, not to this point, Pat, no, but I think it would be a very valuable conversation like we've talked about in the past to reach out to them.
Okay. Yep.
Again, splash pad. My thought when that showed up in 2022, Pickleball brought up a great point. We have a 50 and older group of citizens, and that this is recreation for them. Splash pad is obviously the younger kids, smaller families. My only thought on that is most public pools or YMCA's, or I'll call it public splash pads, I believe are closed this summer or extremely reduced and not being used. I'd hate to, I guess, as we all say, we don't know what's going to happen, a big question mark. I'd hate to lock and load something like that when that to me, that's the one thing that might be tough to build during an epidemic like this. Or I wouldn't want it earmarked during, build it and it's closed. So
yeah, that's a valid point.
That's a good point, Mike.
I think
So,
yeah.
Mike, so to have it such that can we have several other things on the shelf? If not this, then that. If not that, then this. More of a smorgasbord approach to what we can do if we can get the funding.
Yeah, yeah, I can include some smaller ticket items in 2022, kind of like we did in 2021. But I just need to know from a staffing perspective what the board wants me to bring to council for bonding, right? I mean, we can have we can have $500,000 worth of bonding projects scheduled for 2022. And the board says, we want to pick this one. And those are the ones I bring to council. And then the ones that don't basically get pushed back to the next year, then pushed back to the next year. I mean, we could do it like that. I mean,
Yeah.
the only thing that I didn't want to have happen is, in the past year, we've identified like $1.1 million worth of projects. Now, granted, a lot of it was lakefront park included, but I want to have some kind of roadmap and not just have everything
Sure.
all at once. So,
Yeah.
That
No, I
makes
think
sense.
the roadmap makes sense, and I think that comes through over the 10-year plan, Mike. I think that makes sense, especially how you've laid out some of the bathrooms and some of the playgrounds and things like that. So I think it actually is a good big picture long term, but I think with funding and stuff,
Tweaking.
there's going to have to be a little bit of flexibility with how we enter into, especially I think the next couple of years. So
okay. So what I can do is I can certainly add some of those smaller items that have the gray lines on the spreadsheet. I can include those sporadically in the given years. Based upon kind of Mike's comments, I didn't really think about that, building a splash pad during a pandemic.
Yeah.
In a couple of years, it might not be used, right? It might be a
Mhm.
totally different world in a couple of years. So maybe we push that back, to the next cycle and see where we sit, because I think it's a really cool feature for the city and it would be used a lot, but maybe it's not the right time to put it in.
I think that's right. I think if we moved it even to 2023, we'd have a much better idea of usage and whether it makes sense at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, I'll make that change.
Any other items stick out in people's minds?
Is there anything that was omitted? I mean, that I didn't include that you really want to see in the next couple of years as we kind of draft this, final CIP to council?
Mike, the thing I would bring up is again that plumbing for the dog park.
Yeah.
Just because they said they would buy all the fountains, is all they want us to do is run the pipes there, right?
Yeah, and to be honest, Paul, I think we can just take that out of operating, out of Grandview. It's probably only going to be a couple $1,000s to run
Oh,
some
it
pipe
is?
over there.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's
Okay.
kind of my thought. Yeah,
Okay,
Mhm.
great.
That
I
should
just
go
didn't
pretty
want us
good.
to forget it, yeah.
yeah. But I think even this fall, if we have some remaining monies in the Grandview budget, we can look at doing this fall. But definitely next year, we'll get something run over there for them. We did a small irrigation pipe at Field 5 up at Grandview, and I think it was only like $750. So it's nothing outrageous.
So if we take the 300 out and move it, could we add, are there other parks that need bathroom upgrades, or, like Paul suggested, the wedding gazebo or something like that, putting that in there? We've got sidewalks at Burton. Is that in there anywhere?
No.
What I like about the gazebo is it's super cheap. It's 10 grand. But you could really pack a lot of punch out of it because you could rent it out for weddings. So you could feels like you'd get your money back pretty quick for people doing weddings there or photos there.
Yeah,
or
of course.
whatever you do.
Right.
But of course, with the pandemic, we're limiting people in the park anyway. So, but maybe that won't,
So the one thing I want to ask about the wedding gazebo is, it would go on that picnic point, or not picnic point. What do you call that, Pat?
The
Prospect
overlook.
Point. Yeah.
Prospect Point. I mean, that's like the shot of Hudson. And
Right.
there's like hundreds and hundreds of photos taken of that area, family stuff, and then we would put up a wedding gazebo and they would be in the photos. Or I'm just thinking.
No, I think part of the talk of the wedding gazebo was to go out on the other point over by the hospital site.
Oh,
Just a plain nice pad of some sort would be just fine. You don't have to put a gazebo like a structure. I think it would provide a spot for people to put their wedding, to have their
Structure.
and their structure themselves, because during this pandemic, we have booked that we're up to probably 12 weddings. We have like 3, 4, 5 more coming this fall because everybody's had to choose different locations outside to make, to small in the event, to make their venues smaller. So I don't think necessarily a structure. I think it would be more of a pad where they can put chairs and maybe an officiant and things like that. I don't.
Okay.
That-
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Makes sense.
so it wouldn't take away from the actual
View.
view. Yeah. Just a thought. That's what I'm gathering, that people bring their own stuff.
So
Mike,
then having,
Go ahead, Mike.
I would say having heard that, I mean, we can include the, asphalt point trail and the wedding gazebo in 2022 and just kind of clean up that area. Cause right now it's a crushed rock path. And if we want to have more weddings out there, it's becoming more popular, to have a nice asphalt trail for everybody to walk to, a place for them to set up their structure. I mean, I can definitely see that happening.
Good one. Any other item?
Just a point of information, Mike. I don't know what a rip wrap is at Picnic Point for this is 2025.
So
What's the rip wrap?
So that's the big limestone rock that you see on a shoreline to help with erosion. Large limestone boulders, and basically it would be wrapped from kind of where the beach ends at the boat launch, wrap all the way around Picnic Point to where the sailboat school is. And it would be a couple things, aesthetically it look a lot nicer, and B, it would be structural too. It would help with future erosion as the river continues. But that one there are grants available through the DNR that we would apply for to help pay for that project.
good.
And then also the St. Croix Trailhead for the same year, the $150,000. Can you explain that?
Yep. So that's a part of the waterfront vision study. The parking lot at the west end of St. Croix Street, Mike, where you were thinking about before. Right now, the city acquired that property from an oil company, Pat, if I
Yes.
recall.
Lupke Oil.
And right now there's a couple of cold storage units, and in the waterfront vision study, it shows it having a paved parking lot, a possible restroom, a trailhead for bikers to get onto, the lakefront trail, which will continue, to Afton. The goal of the county, the city, and the surrounding communities to make this loop trail, kind of what Stillwater and Holton started, a area destination, and kind of hook all these trails up together. So that was a logical spot as part of the waterfront vision study to put a trailhead with an actual parking area, an actual restroom, trailhead, so on and so forth. So that's what that is, Paul.
That would be really cool too. I love that.
Mhm.
Thinking. That'd be a cool thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think what I'll do is, I'll move back the splash pad, and then I'll put in the gazebo, asphalt trail, and then I'll sprinkle in some of the smaller items that have been omitted. Basically, I'll fill this out. Instead of any gray lines, there'll be, I'll put those amenities in there, and then every year or every 2 years when the buying cycle comes up, at least the park board will have some other options other than the big ticket items, because who knows, it might be another pandemic in 5 years and we can only spend 15,000, that type of thing. But then also I'll have a conversation with the city administrator about pickleball, and including that some sort of monies in there for 2022 and get his reaction to that.
Yeah.
That sounds great, because 2022 would be, if we don't do the splash pad, we would have maybe some monies available for pickleball too. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what I'll do is I'll bring this back to park board next month, and then we'll have a final approval on it. That'd probably be the last time that we'd be able to have any say in on it before it goes to council for final, and then include it in the outdoor rec plan.
Okay.
I'm good.
Next
That's
item
good.
we got, Mike, is future projects.
Future
Project
projects. So, yeah, project update. So this we have the ongoing Grandview Park restroom pavilion. They poured the concrete pad last week. Excel Energy is going to be running some power there, and then once that's ran, the masonry people are going to get in there, and the block wall is going to start going up. So once that happens, it'll go up pretty quick. At council meeting last Monday, Hudson Boosters is going to start playing some softball tournaments out at Grandview Park. They're going to adhere to the St. Croix County guidelines. So there's going to be some activity out at Grandview Park. And then the only other thing that I really have is the boat launch. Obviously, you know, just kind of keeping you abreast of what's happening down there. It's been a bumper year. I mean, it's amazing how much use that thing has gotten this year. We're gonna break the all-time record for revenue. So it just kind of piggybacks on the conversations we had earlier about expanding that facility, because I mean, there's a need down there, and I'm sure we all see it. And so it's a nice amenity for the city to have, and to really make it kind of the jewel of the area it's going to be awesome. So
Good. Any items for future agendas? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved.
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone, for participating.